are these people?
You know, and those polls about Ukraine also went the same way, which leads us to our next story.
Yeah.
This
So
story.
you might have to help me out with a little bit with this. I mean, I've read it, but just give me more. I feel you have a better understanding on this. Actually, let me move this quick than I do. So there we go. So this has gone under the radar, in the media, but I think it's significant enough in terms of. I feel this is kind of the beginning of not the beginning, but I think this is more ramping up of escalation that's happening in Ukraine right now. So I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens from here on out, definitely as we head into the second half of the year. Just yeah, so this should be very concerning to folks. So as the title says, Ukrainian Dam DESTROYED. And I'm going to mispronounce these names of places well in advance, so forgive me for that. But this is a True File Common Dreams article written by Jake Johnson, where he reports drinking water threatened and thousands evacuate after Ukrainian dam destroyed, or any heightened concerns about the operational safety of the, oh boy, Zagor,
Zaporizhia, I think.
I guess,
Zaporizhia.
Zaporizhia
Russian
nuclear
words, bro.
power plant have intensified.
It's that.
Yeah.
It's that. Cyrillic, man. It's tough.
Yeah. All right. I probably might just give it a nickname because I feel bad.
Zaporizhia.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to whatever. Just call it the Z. Well, people will
Look,
know.
I'll just call it Zappo for this. And
Yep.
I apologize in advance. To people who might be Russian. Already heightened concerns about the operational safety of the Zappo nuclear power plant in southeastern Ukraine intensified further on Tuesday after a major downriver dam was destroyed, forcing thousands to evacuate as water surged through the breached structure. The racked barrier held back a body of water equal in size to Utah's Great Salt Lake, and the reservoir supplies water for the cooling of the Zappo facility, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. The reservoir also serves as a key source of drinking water. Ukraine and Russia blame each other for the dam's destruction, which would constitute a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. Reuters reported that neither side offered immediate public evidence to substantiate the accusations.
Neither. Okay. So sure.
Okay. Well, let's keep going. The International Atomic Energy Agency, which has been monitoring the Zappo plant for months and vocally warning about ongoing threats to its integrity, said Tuesday it was closely examining the fallout from the dam breach, but there was no immediate risk to the safety of the plant. But Rafael Marinino Grossi, the IAEA's Director General, stressed Tuesday that an absence of cooling water in the essential cooling water systems for an extended period of time will cause fuel melt and inoperability of the unit. Wait.
I did it.
Sorry. Of the emergency diesel generators at Zappo, which is currently controlled by Russian forces. The plant is roughly 90 miles upriver from the breached dam. The main line of cooling water is fed from the reservoir and pumped through the channels near the thermal power plant to the site, said Grossi. It is estimated that the water through this route should last for a few days. Water in the reservoir was around 16.4 meters at 8 a.m. If it drops below 12.7 meters, then it can no longer be pumped. Grossi noticed that there were a number of alternate sources of water, including a large cooling pond next to the site, so that by design is kept above the height of the reservoir. It is therefore vital that this cooling pond remains intact. Nothing must be done to potentially undermine its integrity, he added. I call on all sides to ensure nothing is done to undermine that. My trip to ZNPP next week was planned, and now it's essential. I will go. The Associated Press reported Tuesday that the potential far-reaching environmental and social consequences of the disaster quickly became clear as homes, streets, and businesses flooded downstream and emergency crews began evacuations. James Elder, a UNICEF spokesperson, said in a statement that the impacts of the dam's destruction will be acutely felt by children, many of whom will be left homeless and without reliable access to clean drinking water. This is yet another merciless attack on infrastructure that is vital to the well-being of everyday Ukrainians, said Elder. Outside experts and critics of nuclear power have been warning for more than a year that the longer the war drags on, the greater threat of the catastrophe at Zapo, which has already been significantly damaged by shelling. In a March 2022 report, Greenpeace wrote that in the event of a loss of cooling and resultant fire in any of the spent fuel pools at Zapo, the potential for a very large release of radioactivity which have a devastating effect not only on Ukraine but also its neighboring countries, including Russia, and potentially, depending on the weather conditions and wind directions, on a large part of Europe. Ukrainian and Russian officials traded blame for the disastrous dam breach. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky tweeted Tuesday that Russia blew it up, an alleged attack that he called a bomb of mass environmental destruction. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, for his part, said during a news briefing that we can state unequivocally that we are talking about deliberate sabotage by the Ukrainian side. Meanwhile, according to Reuters, some Russian-installed officials said that the dams have burst on its own. So basically, it's right now more or less an idea of like he or she did it.
Yes. But we kind of already know who, like, Russia didn't have any reason to.
Right.
Like, they're already winning. You know.
Right.
RFK said today they're killing Ukrainians at a 7-to-1 rate. So, like, you know, I mean, it's just like, we'll get into our next story. It's just like Nord Stream stuff. Well, we don't know who did it. It probably the Russians killed their own stuff. It's like, why would they do that?
So
like,
you can play that clip. It's no sound, but just to kind of give you a bird's eye view of the destruction of the dam. Wow, take a look at that. But
yeah,
this was attached. I can read
water.
that. I can actually read it from here. It's good. So I'll read this tweet from Mario Naval.
Yeah.
I guess is how you say it.
Oh, you've got it.
And he writes, the Kakhovka hydroelectric dam, situated in Russian-occupied territory, has blown up. The dam supplied water to Crimea, as well as the Russian-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. To get an idea of the size of the dam, the volume of the water it holds is similar to that of the Great Salt Lake in Utah. Multiple houses are being evacuated as towns near the dam begin to flood. Images from Nova Kakhovka show buildings surrounded by floodwaters and even swans paddling around the local government office. The dam is important for various reasons. Holds reservoirs for water from multiple communities, provides cooling water to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, carries water to Russian-occupied Crimea. Ukraine and NATO blame Russia for this attack, claiming it's an attempt to slow an Ukrainian counterattack that would use the road above the dam. The mayor of Nova Kakhovka claims it's a Ukrainian terrorist attack. Russia has previously carried out several attacks on dams throughout the war. As the blame game continues, how will each side respond?
Yep.
So you can see
that's a crazy amount of water.
that's a lot of water.
Yeah. That's a lot of damage. Wild.
Yeah.
I mean, they were still showing it. I saw that too. Like they were still bombing that.
Yeah. So actually, we can go to the next one. So, friend to the show, one day, hopefully. Richard Medhurst actually spoke about this. You probably can guess what his take is. But given that he's in Europe, we'll see. You can check out what he has to say in regards to this. So,
wake up, asshole.
Well,
so you have another terrorist attack in Ukraine. This time it's the Kakhovka Dam. And the first thing the media do is blame the Russians. So let's see why the Russians would do it. They control the dam. They control the region. They need the dam to funnel water to Crimea, which is also under Russian control. They literally have zero motive. There is no motive. You know, the Washington Post in December published an article showing how Ukraine targeted this dam using American missiles, using the HIMARS system.
But like no significant evidence on either side to say anything. Okay.
Actually fired a missile at this dam to test if they could flood areas. Sound familiar? This is the same thing that we saw with the Nord Stream pipeline attacks, right? The first thing the press do is let's go and blame Russia. And now, almost a year later, the Washington Post finally admits that Ukraine, not Russia, Ukraine blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. This is something that I, myself, and others have been saying since the very beginning. Anyone with half a brain knew that it was not Russia. Russia would not blow up their own pipeline. But, you know, this was dismissed as a crackpot conspiracy theory that NATO would maybe do this or Ukraine. No, that's Russian propaganda. And another example, the Nazi patches. This week, the New York Times also finally admit that Ukrainian soldiers en masse are wearing Nazi patches to the point that Western journalists have to ask them to hide the patches before they take photos of them. I mean, this is despicable on another level. And then later they claim that these are authentic photos. This is not journalism. This is curated propaganda. So are the New York Times and Washington Post doing propaganda now, right?
Always
They're doing
been.
Russian disinformation. These people are not doing journalism, all right? You guys are a year late. Only publishing the truth when nobody cares anymore. That's not journalism, okay? They are the ones doing disinformation. They are the ones doing propaganda. And these acts of state terrorism, blowing up pipelines and dams, European leaders say literally absolutely nothing. And all they do is give more money and more weapons to an army where men are wearing Nazi patches and blowing up our infrastructure. So what's the conclusion? Always ask yourself, who stands to gain? Whether we're talking about the Crimea Bridge, Nord Stream pipelines, or the Kakhovka Dam like today, always ask yourself who stands to benefit, and you'll find the answer, you'll find the truth.
Thank you, Richie.
Yay.
But that helps clarify.
Yep.
Like, Russia had nothing to gain from blowing up essentially its own dam in its own territory, especially given that they benefited in that way. So I honestly would not be surprised if the US had a hand in this. Too. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yep.
So, but I think, of course, you know, as I said, I think we need to be careful because this is what, and I'm surprised this didn't get a lot of news, but as far as I know, at least mainstream, but this could be the catalyst, I think, as more things are wrapping up.
Yeah.
To like where there actually be more of an escalation in Ukraine. And I feel bad because ultimately, you know, like, fuck Zelensky, but like Ukrainian lives are being lost here in the midst of all of this, you know, in terms of what? Like recognition, you know, like, as we say, kind of notice me, senpai, you know, notice me, US, look at what we're doing. We're doing the handiwork, give us more money so we can continue to blow up our own country, you know, in the name of, you know, like, I don't know. But yeah, it's like, it's kind of it's really despicable to kind of think.
You saw Jamal Bowman this week, right? Where he gave they
Right,
asked him,
yeah.
Gray Zone people asked him where like, do you know anything about the Donbass, Crimea?
No.
He's like, I don't have
No.
right, like
No.
yeah,
No.
I don't have enough knowledge of that. And then they asked him, so you
No.
support the war in Ukraine? And he's like, yeah. Well, why? Because
Why?
Putin bad man. Putin madman.
Right.
And it's like, that's the dumb argument. That's how you try to convince stupid people that
Look, we talked about doing that story, and I was like, no, because I feel like we've bashed him enough on this show. Like, we can give him a break until there's something more worthwhile. But like,
yeah, Jimmy covered it today, so we're good.
We talked about him a couple of weeks ago. Like drag that old man across the finish line, whatever he's whatever. But this man was a principal, man. Like I find it hard to
then too.
Right, but it's like you ran a school. Like you're supposed to help your students critically. Allegedly critically think.
Yeah.
And like, and this is the best that we got in Congress, that you're not even intellectually curious to know like the complexities of what's happening in Ukraine and why even at minimum why people in your constituency are like, we don't want you giving money to Ukraine. Like you haven't had like the curiosity to try and figure out why that is.
Yeah.
So, so it just kind of shows, that he's in his own little bubble and he's just following orders right now from Hakeem Jeffries. He'll just do whatever he's told.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure a lot of it he knows. Again, his buddy Monja Jones didn't make it. So he doesn't want to be next. He's probably on the chopping block.
Well, they
so
have to go back to playing dumb. Yeah, they know. They all know.
Right. Yeah. So it's just his way of kind of not keeping somewhat of a low profile in the appearance that he's actually doing something. So to try and win favor from the people who are looking at him more nominally to say, oh, yeah, he's fine.
Right.
But no.
I saw a couple of the squad trying to pull back on this too.
What's that?
There's a couple of the squad trying to pull back on this Ukraine stuff. Little bit.
What do you mean pull back?
Well, like, I think it was Jayapal who was like, well, if they're attacking Russian space, then I'm not in support of that. Like they're trying to mince their words a bit to like, pander. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but this story with the dam reminds me very, very much of our next story.